You know what actually what actually might constitute as like the worst time skip if we're being like, even outside the bounds of anime, it would technically be it would technically be the skip from Rugrats to All Grown Up.
You know what you're spitting.
I literally hit up Brother Man Zosarr at the beginning of the day. I think almost immediately after I had read the chapter that inspired this conversation, being like, we should talk about time skips today. And to give context again for anyone that just jumped in like crooked, when I say time skip, I'm talking about moments in a story where there is a significant leap in time. So I'm not talking about like, oh, it's like tomorrow. I'm not even talking about like 1 month. I'm talking about like a few years, maybe minimum like one or two, depending on how drastic the changes are or those time skips. But we're talking
um,
about time.
I definitely was under the wrong impression of what we meant by time skips.
What were you thinking of?
When you say like years, I'm like, wait a minute.
Well,
Because the first
we
example
could do
that
like
we
six
talked about
months.
was One Piece, right?
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
like what I said when I hear time skip. One Piece is the first thing that pops to mind.
right. Because of the
Um,
2 year, 3 day time skip.
And then even when I brought up other examples like Sword Art Online, that's just because like in the very first season of Sword Art Online, they're spending 2 years in Aincrad, but they skip around like month to month. Like I think the
Mm,
after the second episode, they go from them being like what 2 months into it to like almost a year later. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah.
And then they skip another like 3 months to show like the honeymoon period. And this is for anybody who hasn't seen the very first 12 episodes of Sword Art Online, like the spoilers. But
Yeah, I mean it's an anime that's literally over 10 years old now. Like it's, because it's
hmm
big caveat. If an anime is over even 5 years old at this point, we're probably gonna spoil at least a little bit of it. Nothing huge spoilers if you get into like huge major of anything. We'll like say, but otherwise like go under the assumption that we're gonna be yapping about some spoilers for most things that come up today. With that in mind, though, so like obviously, well, not obviously, but I know Sword Art Online is your favorite anime. But is that
hmm
also like your favorite use of a time skip, or like when you think of time skip, you already said One Piece comes to mind. Is that like your favorite type or favorite one? Like, what is your experience, I guess, with time skips in general when it comes to stories?
mm Okay, oddly enough, my favorite use of time skip is well, Sword Art Online I think does a terrible job with it because I think they use the time skip to skip over content that really could flesh out the world of Sword Art Online and help them better
Mm,
emphasize what they're trying to get across, right? Because Sword Art Online is not about it's not about this one 14-year-old kid who gets stuck in a game for 2 years and he falls in love with this girl, right? That's
right.
like secondary. Sword Art Online is about the advancement of VR technology, AR technology, and how it could shape society and all that, right? So when you get to setting up the world and whatnot, that's like a very important part to it. And they just kind of like, fuck ball,
It's a we
you
ball.
know?
We care more about just hanging out with these two guys, with these two pals, falling deeply in love with each other. Forget the whole,
Right.
you know, genre defining, world changing MMORPG everyone's stuck in that has all the potential to
hmm
be its own story.
And Sword Art Online can be said to be like one of the original isekais. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's not the typical isekai that we see now, but it's definitely someone
Oh
from one
yeah.
world going into another one, you know?
Oh yeah, I
So
completely agree with that. I feel like and tell me if you're feeling, but I definitely feel like Sword Art Online had to catapult the isekai genre into a new
yeah.
stratosphere. Like, say what you like.
hmm
People I know have a very love hate relationship with how Sword Art Online was because of what you just said. The very hard transition in tone towards the romance aspect of what was going on. But
hmm
off premise alone, Sword Art Online had people in a chokehold when it came out. Like it was doing numbers. It has
Yes.
so many seasons for a reason. It has the Sword Art Online. It has the Gun Gale Online side anime that I'm actually a pretty big fan of. Yeah, I fairly like. I like it.
I think Sword Art Online can kind of, I'm not going to put it on that level, but it is the example I'm going to use, can kind of go into this One Piece esque era where they have like such a vast world that they can have these alternate spin-offs of just like different video games doing different things with the world seed that Aincrad had created. So
Yeah, and it was like it's fun that they did it. I'm not mad at the fact that they did want to like branch out that way. It's just like you said, it's a missed opportunity to not work with like the blueprint that they did have going on.
big missed opportunity.
Yeah, but aside of Sword Art Online, you were saying you think their use of time skips was horrible.
Horrible, yeah.
I think that actually hits on something that I was talking about a little bit before you hopped on. Was I feel like time skips can be such a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, they are an opportunity to skip over anything that you could see as potentially boring. Because the big thing that comes to mind is if you're using like an action shonen manga or battle action or whatever, like One Piece or like Naruto is another big one. Naruto's time skip was so big that they had to create a whole separate series, pretty much, with Shippuden. And in several ways, I think that can be cool. Like, if you know that you're going to have your characters going hard in the paint for their training arcs, and you don't think the training arc is going to be particularly interesting, or the type of training that they're going to have to go through is not going to be, like, all that glamorous, like, that training arc will make sense to me. With the important caveat of, I do think there are interesting ways to do training arcs. So it's like you said, when you do a time skip, I feel like when you do it, you have to make sure you display it in such a way where I'm not thinking about all the stuff that happened during that time missed.
I'm glad you said that. That brings up the anime that I did want to talk about that like does a great job, and they did such a great job of doing that time skip that they came back and made a second season of the stuff that they skipped. Do you know what I'm talking about? Before I even say it,
I'm trying to. No, what are you about to drop? What is it?
it is a romance anime.
It's a Oh wait, hold on. Okay, wait. Maybe I should know this.
I'm gonna give you a second.
Nah, hit me with it. What is it?
It might be. What were you thinking?
I was thinking of Horimiya for some reason, but I don't think that's right.
Yes.
Is it Horimiya?
Yes.
Oh my god!
Yes.
Wait, really?
It is literally Horimiya. The first
is
season
that what second season is?
Absolutely, so good. They made a second season of the stuff that they missed, like they skipped over, because Horimiya is one of the few romances that like actually ended, right?
Yeah.
And the first season literally went over beginning to end, but it skipped a lot of stuff because they thought people weren't going to find it interesting.
No, I literally went back and read the manga after the first season because I was like, what else was going on?
Horimiya was so well received that they came back and made a second season, called it I think it's like Horimiya Pieces or something like that.
Yeah, it's like Missing Pieces. Damn. Oh my god, that really is perfect now that I know that. I completely just thought they were coming up with new stuff when I saw that they were doing a second season. I didn't realize they were actually just retroactively being like, y'all liked this so much the first time. That's actually hilarious.
Yes. Now I haven't watched it, the Horimiya Pieces, just because if something does, like it might be a show that I just don't ever watch. You know what I'm talking about, like that second season.
Yeah.
Just because of how like Horimiya is literally my favorite romance anime ever. So.
Understandably, it is like pretty damn good. It's pretty.
But yeah,
good.
I think Horimiya does a perfect job of time skips because there are points in time where what is being skipped is their relationship developing, and I think most. Let me not say most. Maybe about like 50% of romance anime, they do that where they skip points in times where the relationships are developing because it's not really anything to talk about, but time is passing, right? Like your first episode is like the character meeting the other character that they're falling in love with, and then the third episode is maybe like midterms. Yeah. And then 6th, 7th episode, they're going on vacation, right? So it's summertime again. And then the last episode typically ends up with like festivals.
Yeah, school festival or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe they
festival. Maybe it's like winter and they're like trying to get away from the cold. So they go to like a beach or a vacation or something like that. So I think romance animes have a good, what's the word I'm looking for?
Excuse,
I guess grasp is what I'll say.
Oh, okay, go ahead. No, grasp. You're going for something else. Go ahead.
Yeah, they have like a decent grasp on how to use the time skips. Sometimes they do it really well. Sometimes they don't do it really well. One show I think that doesn't do it really well, and it's being well received, but I think it's being well received for the wrong reasons.
Mm.
Is called Cherry Magic. Have you heard or seen Cherry Magic?
Cherry Magic. No, I'm about to look this up.
It's like this 30-year-old virgin. He ends up
The very
developing the
first
powers to
thing I
read
see,
minds.
literally
Hmm.
the headline says 30 years of virginity can make you a wizard.
Yes, literally.
That's
So 30 years of
hilarious.
a virgin, he gets the power to read minds. One of his coworkers like taps him on the shoulder or something to like inform him. Maybe like his shoelace is untied or some shit in the beginning,
Hmm.
and he's
Yeah,
like talking
Arson,
about
yeah.
how attracted he is to that guy, and the coworker is like the hottest guy in the office. Everybody loves him. Yada yada yada. Right.
Right.
Um, I think they spend maybe like 2 years. It's a 12 episode anime. They spend like 2 years together. Um, and I don't think they do a great job at all of fleshing out these characters. And the time skips really feels
Forced or
rushed.
okay,
Yeah,
rushed.
forced
Yeah.
and rushed.
Okay.
Like,
Damn.
I don't know. I don't know. I do know, but like I would really have to like dive into the roots of the actual show, and I think it's a great show to watch. I think it's a good show to watch. Um, but yeah. That's
No,
why I say
that's
it's like a
fair.
50-50. Some romance animes they have it unlocked. Other romance animes they're just kind of
Yeah, and it kind of meh.
struggling.
Yeah, I think it's
Hmm.
so interesting that you actually brought up romance animes because even when I first brought this up, the manga that inspired this, I was showing him earlier was Centuria, and
Hmm.
that is very strictly like like a drama action manga right now.
Hmm.
Um, it's because they're in chapter 31 right now, and they have a 5 year time skip like in the middle of the chapter. Like it's not that the
Sheesh.
chapter doesn't start with it; it literally just
Hmm.
like happens. And it was such an interesting decision to me because it's so recent into the manga itself.
Hmm.
Granted, a lot has happened in the first 30 chapters of this manga. Like an obscene amount happens in the first 30 chapters. And it's solid. Like it's not I'm not saying that it's like a bad thing. It's all like it's despite the amount of things that happen and the gravity of those things, it is all
Hmm.
done with like a with the vibe of like let them cook. They know what they're doing. It's being done with grace. So I'm curious as to where it will go, but I always think of time skips with because of that. I think of time skips with action stuff first, and like the excuse of using it to get the training arc in, like I said before. But
Yeah.
I think you're actually right. I'm trying to think if there's any anime that I can think of, or just stories in general that use the time skip where they go from like you know what actually might constitute as like the worst time skip if we're being like even outside the bounds of anime it would technically be it would technically be the skip from Rugrats to All Grown Up.
You know what you're spitting. You're actually spitting.
Yo, like that actually just hit me because like now I'm like hey, Artson, you get it because it's like on the one hand I love the idea of a time skip when used to see how so many things that were core personality traits of like a younger version of protagonist get changed when they go through like puberty, teenagehood, even young
Right.
adulthood. Like I think that as a concept is ripe for actual examination. Um, it's just I can't think of too many stories off the top of my head where they actually use that time skip to discuss how someone is changed by something or like events in their life and then go
Hmm.
through it retroactively as the story continues. There is like the closest I could thing that come to is like Undead Unluck is a manga going on right now.
Hmm.
I think we've talked about Undead Unluck because it still has one of my like favorite current power systems in any
Hmm.
manga period.
We
They
have,
use
and people have recommended it to me, but I haven't watched it.
yeah. It's very cool. It's one of those manga that definitely gotten better over time. Like it starts off
Hmm.
like okay, like it's fun. It's so goofy and zany that it's like obvious that the first uh dozen chapters are very invested in you understanding how ridiculous the fighting is going to be in this manga. And
Hmm.
it's like I love it. But that show uses time skips very liberally and
Really?
yes, and it's for a very specific purpose. Like I'm not gonna spoil too much of that,
Hmm.
but it is like time travel and the idea of time is very different in Undead Unluck, because the whole thing with the Undead Unluck is their goal is to essentially kill God, like literally kill God, or kill one of the god, or like kill a god. There's not a lot of
Hmm.
them, but there is one of them is like they want to kill him, and part of this whole like battle between God and the negators, the people that have powers, is that they are constantly being looped. So they are literally going through like the same timeline of Earth repeating
Hmm.
every single time. And there's like different things in each timeline per se. Like, okay, this character is like this character has this different origin. Like a huge thing when like very significant thing happened in the story and like who got two time travel changed, like the characters themselves started to change as a result of that.
Hmm.
But because of that, time skips are very interesting in that show because on the one hand, some stuff is like a year that changes. Sometimes they will make a 3 years pass in 30 seconds, very purposely. Like that's literally the logic. We just fast forwarded 3 years just cause.
Hmm.
And then there'll be times where it's like, yeah, so they were chilling for like a cool millennia or two, 2,000
Interesting.
years, 200 years. Like it really is that vibe.
Hmm.
Because the thing that they do with the person that time travels, who's not the undead character, because he has a whole different backstory that I literally could not get into here right now. Um, but when a new loop starts, the
Hmm.
person that does the time traveling starts at the earliest possible moment where they could like feasibly survive. So they're not like starting when Earth is like just a melting rock killing everything in
Right.
sight. Like they are starting when civilization is like really starting to cook, and then they have to just live out until the modern era comes around. So like sometimes that means that it's like thousands of years that they're just hanging out on Earth, either by themselves or finally when they start meeting people, hanging out with different civilizations. And I
Hmm.
kind of love it. I kind of love the way they use it because it
It
turns one of the
seems wild.
it is, but because it's so wild and because so much of the story itself is already insane, it makes
Hmm.
it very believable. And by being believable, the upgrades and like the sheer amount of power and like actual knowledge that the main character gets is great. Like she becomes like a master chef in that time. She knows
Hmm.
she like masters every bit of martial arts in that time because the manga is so aware of how long that time is, like it's literally thousands of years. They're like, yeah, there's no
Hmm.
reason that she shouldn't spend all that time learning how to do literally everything under the sun. And so like,
Right. It'd be kind of weird if she didn't either.
yeah, so like that's kind of like the flip side of it because like again, it's a ridiculous amount of time skip, but because it's ridiculous, the author and the mangakas and everyone's like, yeah, give them ridiculous power ups as a result. And so in that case, it's like that's too much time for me to ever ask you to turn that into a story. And so
Right.
it's like a perfect use of the time skipped in the sense of because you know how much time you made pass, it's completely
Hmm.
believable that they are doing shit
Would
that
you count
like
that as a
about.
time skip, or would you just count that as like part of the story? You know what I'm talking about?
I think I
Like the time
kind of
skip is the story.
see. I went back and forth on that, and I think it's because of how I think I ended up deciding it was a time skip only because of the way that they return to the story once the time has passed. Because they
Hmm.
gave it the same treatment of like a, oh man, there's a scenario happening in the modern day. Oh no, someone's in trouble. Oh snap, our protagonist in a new look, new ability, new vibe just popped in, and you can tell
Hmm.
they've grown. Like, even though the show or the manga at that point had been very liberal with its use of time, that specific instance immediately reminded me of every other time skip that I had seen up until that point. Not in the sense of like it was literally beat for beat them, but like the vibe and tone of, oh shit, this is
Hmm.
someone in their comeback era.
It's still it to me that still kind of just sounds like it's part of the story. You know what I'm talking about? Like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it really just sounds like okay, like because I guess maybe they're doing it in an unconventional way, but when I think time skips, I'm thinking of, like you said, Naruto. I'm thinking of the One Piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the time skip serves that one point in the story, and maybe it's not just showing people training and they don't want to show you that, but maybe there is a little bit more to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I hear you talk about that story, I'm thinking, okay, like this just, it's not really used to show one thing or showcase like, I guess just showcase one thing. It's used to drive the narrative. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Um, yeah, I guess I go back and forth because again, I think you're right in that like it is impossible to separate that the amount of time in which that happened in the story from not being like a story driver in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way that she returned afterwards just made like is hallmarked by so many of the same cues of the other time skips that I see that like my brain is like, yeah, I gotta count it. I gotta count it there.
I get that.
I was mentioning a few other time skips earlier. We just talked about the One
Mm-hmm.
Piece one. I thought the Naruto one. Some are weirdly like subtle. Like I forget that there's a time skip, but Dragon Ball has a time skip, which is really funny to me. Dragon Ball and Dragon
Yeah.
Ball Z have time skips, which I am kind of surprised does not get talked about more often. Because both of those time skips are hilarious in that I don't like either of them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Not even like dislike them as in like I think they were bad choices. It's just compared to the way other time skips happen, I'm like, damn, it was kind of sudden. Because the first one in Dragon Ball is when like Goku has his growth spurt. Like he goes away, travel, and like not travels, but like trains for the next world tournament, and he comes back, and then he's a grown ass nigga. And it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right. I mean, it's funny.
I actually haven't seen regular Dragon Ball.
I love the original Dragon Ball.
I've only seen Z and Super.
I will always suggest watching the original Dragon Ball just to understand the roots of so many current action
Mm-hmm.
shonen. It's gonna have the hallmarks of an anime that came out at that time. So like Master Roshi's going to be at his most. That nigga should be arrested. Krillin is even gonna have a little bit of that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and there's going to be like jokes that just don't age well because that was the time. But
Yeah.
so much of the original Dragon Ball still has magic to it. The fighting in particular. I will always say that the one thing that I feel like got lost in translation from the original Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z is that the original Dragon Ball is so funny. Like even despite a lot of stuff not aging well, like there are genuinely good like jokes and gags in the original one. It has
Mm-hmm.
much more of like an action or not an action adventure feel to it. Like Dragon Ball Z, most of it's like hands, hands, hands. Dragon Ball was like, oh no, you guys are going on like an adventure. You're having a quest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because this was before instant transmission, basically made traveling non-existent. But
And
yeah,
when in what time skip in Z are you referring to?
I'm talking to the time skip between the Buu saga and the Cell saga. So when Gohan gets deswagged,
Right, right. That shit was brutal.
the deswagification of our king.
That shit was so brutal, man. As someone who grew up like literally Gohan was my king, like
Gohan was the king, man. Gohan was
you couldn't
him.
tell me otherwise. He really was. And it sucks because like to have a moment just like that and then to get absolutely shafted afterwards. And I get it.
I
I
don't.
understand from a literary standpoint, like, yeah, his mom doesn't want him to do anything, wants him to study, and now it's just kind of like ingrained in who he is as a person,
Mm.
right? But we in this goddamn world where niggas is scrapping, bro. Nobody gives a about no school, bro. Like, please let that nigga be great.
Let
Please
him
let
be
that nigga be
great,
great.
please. And they said nope. But yes, yes. After that, Dragon Ball Z derailment. Time skips. Or you know what? We can answer Cricket's question real quick about which universe portrays the most plausible version of the future. Whichever one already had the climate disasters and has people dealing with that, whichever one's got that going on, that's the most plausible version of the future. I know. I'm trying to think. I mean, is there any anime that I can think of that actually like has an interesting approach to I mean, so many of them do have like stuff around climate change or like climate themes or like climate issue
Mm.
themes, but I'm trying to think if there's any. Cricket said, "Relax." He said that's too real. I'm sorry, Cricket. I'm sorry, Cricket. I saw that question. I was just like, hey, man. Do you know the Philippines in the last 2 to 3 weeks has had like oh my god, it's been a ridiculous amount of like not even hurricanes, but just like tropical storms. Like it's literally back to back to back. Cuba's had it too. Back
I
to back
didn't know.
hurricanes. Literally, the global south has been having back to back hurricanes all fall. It's been nuts. Like you think we have like here's the thing, we have had it bad in the states. Hurricane Milton, Hurricane Helene, like that disrupted millions of lives, and took away more than a few, like hundreds,
Hmm.
and that was bad. And the global south is dealing with worse, like genuinely dealing with worse. So it's just if it seemed like that was too real of an answer, Crooked, it's because I'm like staring at the writing on the wall, and I'm always just like, wow.
I'll bring this up. It'll always be on my mind. Me and T were going outside, and I forgot where I was dropping him off at. And I'm like, you know what? It's really nice weather. And he's like, it's Halloween and you're outside in shorts and short sleeve. And
No,
I'm
but like
like,
that's
you're
really
too right.
it.
You're
Like that's
actually too right
it.
about
It's
this.
like, wow, wait a minute, you're kind of spitting. But anyway,
Anyways, back to time skip.
time skips. Yeah, I mean, I think I really like the fact that you brought up the romance stuff because I really wasn't even thinking about the romance ones, but it is so true that they do
Hmm.
even naturally by how even like we'll even extrapolate that to like slice of life stuff. Like they just because of the fact that they're trying to tackle so many different stages of life or have the ability to because that is their focus. They
Hmm.
do tackle the time skip technique in a very fun way that's different than the just usual training stuff that I associate with the shonen manga or battle action manga stuff. Because one caveat to, or one big caveat that I also feel like I get from that is when I see the time skip in like an action story, it feels
Hmm.
like all of the training went into making them a stronger person, but not necessarily a better one. And what I mean by that is like, I'll use a Naruto example. Naruto came back being the same nigga, dude.
Yeah.
He came back to
Yeah.
Shippuden, didn't learn a damn thing. Like he was stronger. He was stronger, make no mistake. He saved the village from pain. He will always have that. Always have
Hmm.
that. But he was the same dude. And it's like, I'm not saying you can't have that core personality stuff because that is
Hmm.
important. But I would have loved if Shippuden had started with him being like almost not so mature that you lose so much of the magic of like why he's an interesting protagonist in the first place, but just like not walking out feeling like the joke in so many of the situations outside the fighting still. You know what I mean?
Hmm. I get where you're coming from. I think for shows like Naruto, though, where more often than not, he's not really. We're not looking at Naruto for character development. We're looking at
Yeah.
Naruto because he's very much. I'm gonna fight for my friends. That's my ninja way. You know what I'm talking about? So
Yeah.
if he were to change, you would have to change that, and that's you're not changing that about Naruto. Like that's
Yeah.
who he is at his core. And throughout the show, one thing I think somebody was talking about this on TikTok a while ago. This might be like 2 3 years ago, but it stuck with me. The fact that like certain shows you can look at them for character growth. Other shows, your main character is expected to stay the same
Hmm.
because it's the world around them that they're trying to change, right? And that very much is the case with shows like Dragon Ball, where like Goku is just himself. He's
Yeah, he's never
um,
changing. Goku's Goku. Goku's
Yep.
Goku's Vegeta's
Naruto
Vegeta.
is
Yeah.
very much himself because he was ostracized by the community, but he never turned his back on the community, right? And that's something you have to respect. It's something you have to
Yeah.
like, okay, Naruto is that guy. So when he came back in Shippuden, very much the same as who he was. And we see like Sasuke is almost this like villain guy. You're like, okay, he's definitely on the wrong
D1
path.
crash out.
Yes, exactly. He's on the wrong path. But Naruto, the person who we've been following this whole time, who's been like changing people as he did with Gaara, you're like, okay, I'm glad my main character is still him. You know?
Yeah, I get that, and like you're not wrong at all. Like there are definitely shows where you're just not expecting that from the character, because them not changing is so core to how the story's even driven and how people outside of him will change. I just think like if you can do it and you can do it well, it's such like a nice little treat. Because I even like well, let's talk about one of the like biggest like I'm surprised we didn't bring this up yet, but like one of the biggest time skips from one of the biggest anime, like Attack on Titan, has a very significant time skip. That the main character with Eren, he comes back to it like a completely different person. Not completely different, but like that is not the same boy from season one. If you had put season one Eren and contrast that with, maybe not the like last episode, but like like the first episode of the last season, that is a night and day transformation in every sense of the word. But it works,
especially in season 4. You really see it a lot because that's when they like take the perspective of like Flacco and Gabby and all of them. You see Eren's like being that undercover agent with like the leg missing. You're like, bro, this guy's crazy.
Yeah, and it's like even with the leg, like that to me is like such a genius time skip. Mostly because that is a moment of not only where the character's personality changes and like it's a sensical change once like all the legwork is done to be like, yeah, this is what happened. This is what was going on. This is why he did that. But even with what you just said with the leg being cut off, that small thing shows like such a genuine understanding of his power that he just didn't have in any previous thing. Like that reveal is nuts. Like it's him, but when he does that, you're like, oh my god, you're working on a whole different playing field than what we thought you were capable of. You're a madman. Yeah, exactly. And it's like I think that's why like I always end up really enjoying that, because that's a moment that married not only a power upgrade, so like the training, the actually being able to like hold your own against the people that were whooping your ass in the previous season, but also a character change that made sense and like still continues to drive the story. Because even like what you said, Eren's change while be feeling authentic is still the driver of that. Like he really just went over there, did his own thing, and brought everyone else into the business. They were like, he was like, he said, do first, ask for forgiveness later.
Definitely. I think what also makes that so good is Attack on Titan very much felt like in the beginning, it felt like, okay, this is a shonen, right? Where he's going to get really good at using his powers, even though his power is crazy in the world that they live in is up, but he's going to get really good at using his powers, and we're going to see him become like this master Titan who ends up saving the world somehow, right? We didn't know how he was going to save the world, but that's very much what it felt like. And then it went the exact fucking opposite of he's no longer the savior, he is the problem. And you're like, whoa, what?
Problem
but that's character development.
One.
He developed from what we initially thought he was and what he probably initially thought he was going to do to something entirely fucking different.
Entirely different. And it worked. Worked.
They did a phenomenal job with it.
They did. And it was always super cool. I'm trying to think if there's a time skip that I didn't like. You know what? There was a time skip that I thought I was going to dislike, but I did end up liking, actually. Did you know about this? I think they just had a show on Hulu. The manga just got a show that's streaming on Hulu. The Mission Yozakura family.
I feel like I know what you're talking about, but if you could put it up on your stream, then
I'm pulling up right now.
A little better.
Let me go with this image. Yeah, this image. I've been reading this manga since it started. It's like 200 chapters in now, so like I'm like deep into this. I'm going to be, even if it turns terrible, which I have a hard time believing, because it's like 200 chapters in, or actually I could probably look up how many chapters in right now. But like it's definitely in its like final arc right now, in the manga at least. So like it really can't get bad at this point. Like it can not stick the landing, but I have a hard time saying it's gonna get bad at now.
Mhm.
There is a very interesting time skip that they did. Okay, yeah, it's 251 chapters. Damn. Oh my god. Oh my
It's a
god.
colorful ass show. No, I know nothing about this.
Really? Yeah, no. So this
Hmm.
is, I mean, the basic premise of this story is this is a spy family. He's childhood best friends with this girl. This is Tayo. This
Hmm.
is Mitsumi. His family died in a car accident when they were younger. So like he just kind of grew up right next to them. And then after, I forget what happens in the first episode that spurs him to join the family, but they essentially get married like episode one or chapter one,
Hmm.
and he has to get trained up in this super spy family, because there's like a whole spy world in this anime, but like they are the primo, top of the top. Everyone knows their name.
Hmm.
They are the family. They go back generations. Like if you're in a spy world, you know who the Yozakura are. You people go after them. People want to be them. They are them. Like they're just that family.
Right.
Um, so for a while in the manga, like it's around Tayo basically acclimating to this, having to get used to this world, the craziness and all that. Still being married, and then I want to say around either the 200th chapter or like maybe a little bit before then. There's a 5 year time skip or something like that. Um,
Hmm.
and these it's like a really significant time skip actually, because these two have kids. Like they actually have straight up children, um, and the children are great. But I remember when I first saw them, I was like, huh. It's been a long time since I've read a manga or a story where I'm watching someone with their kids being a parent. And I remember when I
Hmm.
first saw it, I didn't know how to feel because I think it came during a part of the story where I was like, okay, what's the next arc gonna be? How are they gonna deal with this? Like I didn't expect them to go into the time skip era and
Hmm.
much less even have kids with them. Oh my god, yes. Okay, this is what happened. I'm remembering this now. They were like, okay, the next mission that y'all are gonna have to go to, the next big one that y'all gonna have to do as a group, none of you are ready for. You all need to go do your own training with different mentors for the next 5 years. Go do that. So they did do that, and so the next
Hmm.
chapter, raw, everyone that's reading the manga is thinking, okay, okay, what they gonna be like? Who's gonna have change? What's gonna be the power ups? And like some stuff is like you see coming, like Tayo is super cool. Like he just becomes swagged out, dripped down from head to toe in power
Hmm.
and style, and composure. And then they just introduce the kids, and it's like, huh, what? And so like it was jarring, but now I love the kids' inclusion of the show. Like they become central to the story once they're introduced. So that was really nice because I was really worried about that being like so they just want like kind of like extra father to be around to
Hmm.
like pad time or like whatever. It's like no, these kids get active. These kids are characters. Okay, I see you. And they did, and with those being characters, they don't
Hmm.
forget about any of the previous people either. Like everyone else is still getting their shine, but it's almost like because they want to make these kids central, and everyone else's characters basically had their arcs, became their people, or actually a few of them did have like more stronger arcs again once the kids came around, but it was a time skip that that paid off surprisingly well. Like while I was hesitant at first, because
Hmm.
again I just had not seen someone attempt the whole family thing in a long time, it's really working. It's really working with even like the upgrades they gave to everyone else, the way the kids came in. Like it was a
Hmm.
time skip. You know what it is? It was a time skip where I felt like I had seen the most happen to a character in a while. Like with everybody else we've been talking about with like the Naruto stuff or even the Dragon Balls, like that's more like around the power stuff, or with Aaron, we're talking about his character change and his power up,
Hmm.
and those are all still valid and all big. This was like power upgrade, characters kind of changing, two new characters coming in who are integral to the environment, being the products of other characters. Like so much has to have happened from that time skip. But
Hmm.
because the manga spends a lot of time basically reintroducing everyone after said time skip and not trying to rush it while doing it all through the lens of the new characters who are in, it works.
And do you think this is gonna get animated?
Oh, it already is animated.
It is animated.
Yeah, that's why I was saying it was on the Hulu. Um,
Mm.
how many episodes does it actually have right now on Hulu already? It's got
You about to say
27.
it's finished?
It got 27 episodes on Hulu.
They've definitely been schmoving on it, huh?
Oh my god! Wait, it has 27 episodes already? That's insane. I thought this shit started like earlier, like earlier this fall or something.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, that's actually like really funny. Do you want to have any wrap up thoughts from from time skip stuff for time skip things in general?
Time skip stuff in general.
Actually, you know what? Better question about to end on. If you
Mhm.
don't know everybody, Brother Man is a writer himself, a great storyteller. Do you imagine yourself being the type of person like as you continue writing stories that
Mhm.
uses time skips a lot, or do you imagine writing the kind of story where you would think a time skip would be useful or dare I say even necessary?
I think if I were to create a world in which maybe the main character is no longer the main character anymore, it's like a passage of lineage, then
Mm.
I could potentially see myself doing time skips. But me personally, I've always loved training arcs. I've always loved, and I like what Demon Slayer does. They have like whole seasons just dedicated to them training, like that.
That is pretty
That
sweet. That's pretty sweet when you got characters that can really carry the plot like that on their own.
it always keeps Demon Slayer from being at this like, because Demon Slayer more often than not, like the animation is just like really good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really grew a disdain for Demon Slayer when we found out Michael Jackson's backstory, and it was like he's got drugs that made him into the Demon Lord, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, you fucking lost me there, man. You fucking lost me there,
Yeah,
and
Demon Slayer
I don't.
story does kind of fall off a cliff a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into the Nezuko stuff because it's people are like it's gonna get explained later on. This, da, 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 da.
It
I'm like
doesn't.
I don't want to hear it, brother. I really don't.
As
Um,
someone who has finished, who did
mhm.
read Demon Slayer to completion, you're not missing
Mhm.
anything.
I knew I wasn't. I knew I wasn't, but I'm like I'm just gonna let people tell
No, you're
me.
not.
Sure,
You're not.
sure,
Like if you want
but
to
no.
finish it, because there is like cool fight scenes at the end of
Yeah.
it. So like when
Mhm.
those get animated, they're gonna go crazy. But in terms of story, no, it doesn't matter. It really like it
And I
just it
know
just
I'm
kind of
not missing anything in
yeah.
terms of story, but like I said, I enjoy the fact that they spend arcs training, and I, I'm honestly, I'm growing on the fact that like they use the movies to like recap seasons. You know what I'm talking
Hmm.
about? As someone who
Yeah.
like, I rewatch a show before I watch the latest season anyway. So I enjoy the fact that like they'll throw out a movie and it's just like the first 8 episodes or the last 8 episodes of the season, and then like a little bit more here and there. Like I've really been enjoying that, and I see myself writing more so like that, right?
Hmm.
Instead of using a time skip to get my character from point A to point B, because I things have to make sense for me. I
Yeah.
like when things make sense. So even if you give me an episode, even if you give me 15 minutes of a character sitting in a room training, like Itadori sitting in that room holding the teddy bear, training to get his curse energy better. I like that.
It's
It makes
fun. It
more
is
sense
fun.
than you just have Itadori here and you drop him in on an episode and it's like, isn't it cool? He showed up and he's stronger. No, it's not cool. What made him stronger? Why is he all of a sudden beating this bad guy that's just beating his friend's ass? Like I need to know.
Yeah,
So
I do get that. I do get that. I also am a fan of the training arc stuff when they like know how to bring it in. Um, there's a weirdly Yu Hakusho. Weirdly enough, I love Yu Hakusho. I've already talked about that at length on here, and I can probably dedicate a whole stream to why. After having watched most of that show, I really understand why it is like a top three shonen anime of all time. um, I they skip their training arc, um, but in a weird way, like that show pulls off the magic trick of the Dark Tournament basically being a training arc in disguise
mhm.
because with the way the Dark Tournament starts, and I'll make this the last thing is Yusuke disappears for like 3 months or something to go back to doing more training with the woman that originally trained him to like get a hold of his powers in the first place, or his newfound powers in the first place. And like that's skipped over because most of it is like straight up brutal stuff, like climbing mountains, being thrown back down them, hanging out, standing on one finger for 12 hours a day, like just crazy shit that was like, okay, yeah, I do understand why you just only showed this to me for 1 minute at the beginning of the episode of the season. But because the big bad of Dark Tournament is like dominable force that everyone from the announcer to the contestants to even the sponsors are just like, yeah, he's gonna kill everybody. Every other battle, which most of the battles are like barely won. In fact, if I remember correctly, I'm not even sure all of them are won. Actually, basically feel like not only their own stories being carried in a very like soap opera fashion, but they are still, despite how tense and how brutal they are, just training for the guy at the end of it all. Like, it's kind of insane. And that I think I really appreciate it, because it kind of does what you said of still giving me what I want, in terms of like, I understand how he was able to beat this guy now. It didn't just happen. Like I saw it, but it also still felt like its own thing. So it was just a disguised training arc.
I still haven't watched Yu Hakusho,
I know.
which I need to.
You really do. You really do.
I'll get to it when I get to it.
The Dark Tournament really is like probably the best tournament arc. Like,
now, are you saying the show's top 3 just because of the Dark Tournament, or is it like, is everything else in the show?
I'm not even sure the Dark.
Good?
I genuinely not even sure if I think the Dark Tournament is the best season of that show. Like, I love the Dark Tournament after having seen it, but the season right after it, I was like, oh, I'm so locked in. Oh my god, I've never been more locked in. It's not perfect, don't get me wrong. There are things that do happen in this show that I'm like, or no, I'm saying things. There's literally one thing. I've had probably one core issue with this show, and it does not happen until like the end of the season after the Dark Tournament. Everything else, I'm like, I love it. I think it's great. It's just simply great. It's a show that knows how to be completely carried on the backs of the charisma and chemistry of its main cast, of people that are not obsessed, but like truly down and ready to like put their lives on the line for each other, fight each other at times, but also like be incredibly funny. Like, if there's one thing that I love about Yu Hakusho, is that it is such a funny TV show at the same time as being deadly serious. Like, it's almost one of those moments of like, the heart of the show is the fact that they are constantly joking, in stark contrast to the genuine horrors that they are dealing with on a constant basis. Like, Yu Yu Hakusho is a dark TV show. I don't think that's something that like I really understood until I watched it, but it's like, no, like they are fighting for their lives. Like, it's kind of nuts, actually. I do think like the first 3 to 4 episodes, not bad episodes at all, but like they're definitely still like trying to reveal the cards in their hand, but then it just takes off. And then once the momentum gets going, it just never stops. Like, it is a show that rarely kills its own momentum. And even when it is like stopping to breathe for a moment, it's really just like a false sense of security. It's great. I love it. It's a great show.
The way you talk about it, I definitely will have to tap in.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid, I feel like it's not going to be in my top 20.
I mean, you let me know after you watch it, brother, man. You know, it really is just that good. Now it is time to wrap this up. Brother Ben, as always, thank you for hopping in, doing this pretty last minute. It was tons of fun. Definitely something we will have to do again. I mean, I'm sure most people that are here know, but like, you know, if you haven't checked out Brother Ben Zosarr, go check him out. He's on Twitch, streams, all types of stuff. He's been playing Metaphor, Refantagio recently. It's been great watching him play. Check out his YouTube channel too. If you don't want to catch it live, he is posting his Refantagio run on there. Uh, Thank you as always, brother man. I'm gonna go close out the stream now.
No problem, bro.
All right.
Love you, bro.
Love you, brother. Feel better. Talk to you soon.